How's it going? Nice to see you all today. Thursday, October 15th. I am Dr. Tricia Pingle. This is your morning checkup. Different topic today. We're actually going to be talking more on a pediatric topic, more so than an adult topic, although all of us, I'm sure, have dealt with a picky eater, or maybe you're a picky eater yourself. I know some of my friends even that are adults are very picky eaters. So I'm going to talk today about picky eating. I'm going to talk about what you can do about it, when it's a problem, what are some of the most common toddler swaps, what can us parents do to try to get more nutrition into our kids, and should we be worried about this, or is this a normal everyday thing? So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Just allowing some of you to join in. I got my mom mug, which is quite fitting today because I do have a picky eater. It's like a constant daily, it's really kind of like a crapshoot whether or not my youngest is going to eat what we serve him or not. There are times that even he's like, hey, I'd really like to have a hamburger. And we'll make him a hamburger and then we'll put it in front of him. It'll be like, I don't like hamburgers. Like 15 minutes later. So I have one of those, very capricious, very humorous at times, trying to feed him. You know, he'll help make his lunch the night before. And then when he goes to school, he comes home and says, I didn't like my lunch, you know, even though that's exactly what he asked for. So I've been dealing with a picky eater since he was a baby. Now, conversely, my older son, Cameron, literally eats everything and always has. You know, he was our firstborn and we thought, wow, this is really easy. Like, this kid eats everything. Like, we can get him fruits and vegetables and everything and no problem. And then Shay came along and I started to experience what I'm sure many of you have experienced when it comes to picky eating. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Because I'm sure that if you have a young one, you've gone through this, right? Richard, you have a heat wave in New York today. Where are you? What's the temperature? I bet we have you beat here in Arizona, although it is gorgeous here today. Absolutely gorgeous. All right, looks like most of you are here. So, did you know that up to about 50% of parents state that their preschool age children are picky eaters? I know. It's actually quite common. You know, I think most parents go through this where when they're babies, they eat whatever we feed them. And then when they start to hit around 2 years old, it's like, I don't want that. Yes, I don't want that. Oh, I don't want that. And we start to think, God, are they getting enough nutrition? And especially if you're a first-time parent, you really beat yourselves up because you feel like, oh, I'm not getting enough nutrition in my kids. And then people who had gone through this before are like, it's normal. Like, don't stress over it, you know, but you kind of panic about it a little bit, right? There are actual conditions that warrant panic, you know, and so we're going to talk about those, but more so we're going to talk about how to get around this, okay? So I definitely, as a child, would have been considered a picky eater. So I have personal experience from that. And the reason why I was picky was different than why other kids might be picky. And I think this is something that we have to think about. You know, children don't have that emotional maturity to tell us why they don't like something. You know, sometimes I get, well, it's green. I just don't like it. I just don't want it, but they don't know why. Now, in my case, I was a very, very thin child. I'm still a very, very thin adult, right? But if you think I'm thin now, I was much thinner in my youth, throughout my teen years, my young adulthood. I just am a small person. My family is a small person, but I think that because of that, I think everyone tried to stuff food in my face constantly from the time I was a baby through adulthood. I mean, my parents would give me cookbooks for Christmas. Like, they were like, please eat. So I was given food all the time, but I didn't feel well when I ate it. And I think part of it, as I came to realize in my adulthood, was that you know, as a kid and being primarily in single parent households because my parents were divorced and I would move between house to house. And a lot of the times I was home alone. I was a latchkey kid. I was making food for myself that wasn't necessarily nutritious. It was more wheat and dairy. Well, come to find out in my adulthood, I don't do well with wheat and dairy. So I think what was happening is I was voluntarily, as a kid, not feeling well when I ate it, but that's all that was really being offered. And it wasn't until I learned how to cook more vegetables and learn how to cook and figure out what my body liked that I was able to really start eating. I didn't really start eating a lot or a normal amount per se until I was in my 20s, maybe mid 20s. So I think a couple things you always want to consider when you have a child that's picky is it possible that they're having reactions to anything they're eating? For example, my Shay, my youngest, would break out when he was a baby. If he got any gluten, he would break out in a rash. Now, it took us a while to draw that association because babies get rashes, right? And then now, if he has any sort of milk product, he gets really bad stomach aches and gets really tired and gets really grumpy. If he goes to a party and he has, frosting on a cake that has dyes in it, like blue frosting or pink frosting or whatever, he will not feel well for the rest of the day. And so it's interesting because he takes note of that now that he's 9, but when he was 2, he didn't. And so it took a lot of parent involvement to figure that out. So one thing to always look at is it possible that maybe they're not responding well to what's being eaten? I think our society pushes wheat and dairy on pretty much every child from the time they're born, right? Instead of pushing vegetables first or things that are not. I personally didn't give direct gluten or dairy to my children until they were 5. Shay would get like hidden sources and things and it would cause a rash. That's why it was hard to identify because we weren't giving him direct bread. But maybe he would have a granola bar that maybe had a small amount of gluten in it or something like that, So something to consider. Now, granted, there's a psychological aspect to this as well. In most cases, it's just a picky toddler. It's just a toddler trying to assert their independence, right? But there's a few things you can do, especially if they have set foods that they really love that you can incorporate more nutrition in. You didn't like food until you were 12? Yeah, it's funny because I love food now. But I cook, right? I learned how to cook and I figured out what I love to eat and I definitely love a good meal. But when I was little, I really could have cared less whether I ate or not. It really was irrelevant. And I think I just didn't feel well. Even through my teen years, I ate hardly anything in a day and it just didn't really bother me at all. And it's hard when that happens because you wonder, is there an eating disorder? Is there a physiological underlying? Is it a malnutrition? And those are the things you need to pay attention to in the young ones. If they're growing and they're not malnourished and their energy is good and they're sleeping good, those are good signs that maybe this is just a picky eater versus a medical condition, right? Even my youngest niece, I know, I call her my niece, she's my cousin, but anyway, I don't have any brothers or sisters, but she's has a very thin body just like I did, and I know a lot of people worry about her as well, but she's one of the most active children I've ever seen, so I don't worry too much about her, right? So, a couple things I wanted to talk about here. Okay. So some things that you can do. One of the things that I did when my kids were little is I made a ton of smoothies. I still do. In fact, Shay, he will make his own smoothies for breakfast. And what's nice about smoothies is you can fit a lot in there and they may not be quite aware. Now, particularly a toddler, it tastes a lot like ice cream, right? Now, here's the fine line though. I didn't want my kids to rely on ice cream, right? Or hear the word ice cream and associate that as something you should eat every day because obviously when they head off to college, they're going to have real ice cream and they're going to go, whoa, right? So what I do is we'd make these smoothies and I would put spinach in them and I would put, all sorts of different fruits and vegetables to start introducing those tastes to the toddlers. Now, originally you start light on it. You put just a little bit of spinach and then every time you add a little bit more. So that's a great way to get nutrition into kids. There are also ways that you can make their favorite dishes by adding more vegetables. There was a book that I used when Shay was little called The Sneaky Chef. Some of them are more of the traditional toddler recipes. I'm not a huge fan of mac and cheese as a staple, although let's be honest, it's probably the biggest staple in children in America. So they would have like how to add butternut squash to mac and cheese or how to add all these other vegetables into the mac and cheese to get more vegetables in there. I try to go with actually giving them a taste for vegetables. So adding them in slowly and adding more and then maybe doing less cheese over time to be able to get them to get the taste of butternut squash. And then you can start making other things that have butternut squash in them. Does that make sense? Have any of you gone through this? Or is this kind of a topic that you're not experienced with? Any other mamas out there? Dads trying to feed their children? No? There is a condition out there, a restrictive food disorder. They basically say if a child is growing, so as long as they're not losing tons of weight, showing nutritional deficiencies, and having trouble with their daily living, most likely it's a simple picky eating situation and not a restrictive food disorder, which is essentially a type of eating disorder. And it's kind of sad that we've come to all of these little types of disorders that we now develop, right? We used to just have anorexia and bulimia. Now we've got the mix of the two. Now we've got restrictive food disorder. Now we've got these different aspects of mental health. But sometimes I do wonder, are a lot of those simply that the child or the adolescent is not absorbing the food well, or they just don't feel well? I mean, their bodies are so in tune. So often when a child rejects something, it's for a reason. I do commonly ask my kids, why? Why didn't you like that? Did you like the texture? Oh yeah, the texture was okay. Did you like the color? No, I didn't like the color. Sometimes it's as simple as a color, and then you're like, all right, yeah, okay. So then you try to hide that with something else. So if they don't like green, for example, I would add more blue, like more blueberries to their smoothie so that it didn't look green, right? Those are kind of the little tricks. So you got to figure out why they don't like something. And sometimes they don't know, right? If they seem tired, they seem hyper, or they seem like they're just a little bit off after eating, consider maybe a food allergy. Okay, so those are some things to consider before you jump to things like cognitive behavioral therapy or any type of therapy for eating disorders. You have to consider maybe there's a physiological reason. I know for a fact that was part of my reason. I know that it looked like I was voluntarily restricting eating when I just didn't recognize that I just simply didn't feel well when I ate. I got more done when I didn't eat than when I did eat because I would literally want to go to bed. And that just didn't work for me. I was a busy kid. I was up from 5 a.m. until 10 o'clock at night, most times, especially as a teenager, doing different activities and this type of thing. So it was hard to be able to eat constantly if I didn't feel well, So there was that fine balance for me to find of eat enough to keep going, but don't eat too much to knock myself down. So you always have to consider that, right, with kids. I have a few people saying, your husband is the one who's picky. Yup, I know. I guess you need to ask him why, right? Disguise stuff. He needs the sneaky chef, maybe. Lindsay's going through this now. How old are your children or child, Lindsay? Doesn't like veggies. I try to sneak them in. You know what? Look at a lot of, Mary, look at vegan cooking. Look at my website for some recipes, because often there's a lot of really good vegetable recipes, but it's how they're prepared. Preparation in vegetables makes a huge difference. Huge difference. Not everyone likes a salad. They just don't, right? My 4-year-old boy had been the hardest of my 3 kids. Yeah, I know. Thank you. I got one of those too. So, oldest is very picky. Never a problem. Youngest is a picky eater. Not a parent, but have niece watching. Yeah, see? It's common, right? So let me talk to you about some of the foods that I've used as a parent that's allowed me to get more nutrition into my scrawny little kid. And it's funny. What's crazy? I was just outside watching Shay play sports yesterday, and when he gets home from school, which, by the way, at school, yay. My kids are so happy to be back at school, but they get home and they throw the football and the baseball and they run around the cul-de-sac and have a great time. And it's funny because my 9-year-old's actually now starting to gain some weight. He's been like a toothpick from the time he was born, and very similar to me. I'm a toothpick as well. Even in my 40s, I'm a toothpick. I would say probably a bigger toothpick than I used to be, but he's starting to fill out. And it's interesting to watch because he's been my biggest struggle, trying to keep him fed, where Cameron literally, my friends always make fun of him, and a lot of the times he goes over to someone's house and I have to send him with like 3 pizzas because he'll eat them out of house and home. I mean, he'll eat anything. The child for his birthday wants to go out and have scallops and, pork belly. And I mean, he likes to go to the high-end restaurants. He likes to eat really good food. Yet he'll also eat anything. He'll eat anything. So it's quite different, but it was kind of nice to see him Shay start to fill out a little bit. He's starting to grow and fill out, and it's been a long time coming. We've really been working hard at that. Only likes foods he can identify from its source. Will eat salmon like it's going out of style, but won't eat any meat with fat. No sauces, only raw or steamed veggies. Doesn't like his food mixed. Yeah, I don't like my food mixed either, or I didn't for a very long time. All right, Lindsay, nice. Yeah, it's crazy, right? I'm not the best cook and get overwhelmed thinking about what to make for dinner. The more overwhelming to try to make something healthy that my husband and daughters will actually eat. Yeah, and we do that too. We don't all eat the same thing. I'm plant-based. My husband is not, although he humors me and eats plant-based 3 to 4 times a week. And then every so often he'll make some sort of meat and the boys will eat that. And then they'll do vegetables on the side. And then I'll eat the vegetables on the side and maybe add tofu, or we kind of learned how to overlap our dietary preferences a little bit, but it's definitely taken some time, and we're definitely not just making one meal every night. It's kind of a combo meal, almost like a pick and choose, almost like a buffet where they all get to pick what they want, but they're all healthy options, and the kids can kind of pick and choose and learn their own taste. Some of the things I've used, and some have been more successful than others. One thing I used in toddlers, it has not been as successful in school-age children, are veggie noodles, using zucchini noodles instead of pasta. My toddlers loved it. When they started to figure out what I was doing, they were like, oh, yeah, no, like, we're not eating that. But when they were little, they just saw it as a fun noodle that they could pick up with their fingers, and it was covered in sauce, and they loved it. But what's nice about zucchini is it doesn't have an overly strong taste. So when you're using zucchini noodles, you can hide it pretty well under sauces. And it is full of health benefits. Rich in vitamin C, contains health-promoting antioxidants, anti-inflammatory compounds, and it's rich in fiber. You can also do sweet potato noodles, butternut squash noodles. You can play with different vegetables that they may like. I also do sub quite often. You'll see in my swap infographic, I do often sub gluten-free noodles for regular noodles. I've done that since the time they were little, just to avoid a lot of processed gluten in their diet. And so I'll use organic brown rice noodles, or quinoa or chickpea noodles. Chickpea noodles have a ton of nutritional benefits. In fact, that's my number 2, chickpeas. Chickpeas are a staple in the Pingle house. That's a garbanzo bean. If you don't play much with chickpeas, you're missing out, okay? Chickpeas are great for dips and sauces. I have a recipe at drpingle.com for my hummus. The hummus is really easy to make. My kids love it. I've made it here on Alive, I believe. But even if you go to the grocery store, there are a bunch of different hummuses. Okay, a bunch of different flavors. There's lemon hummus and garlic hummus and olive and red pepper hummus and all these types of things. So you can find one that your child really enjoys. And dipping. They love to dip stuff in it. So hummus is always a great option, but there's more with the chickpea. The other thing we do with the chickpea quite often is we roast it with a little bit of coconut oil and cinnamon. And do roasted chickpeas. We can put those into tacos. So my kids love rolling those up in tortillas and eating it like a taco. Sometimes we'll add some roasted sweet potatoes to that. Sometimes they'll just add guacamole. They'll do chickpeas and guacamole, and they love it. Mary's saying roast chickpeas with curry. Me too. I love chickpeas. You can roast them, and then you can even put them, in a Ziploc bag. You can keep them in the fridge, and they can eat them as a snack. You can do some salt on them. You can do it kind of like a chip as well. It can be a nice crunchy snack. Chickpeas are great because they're rich in vitamins, rich in minerals. They are a great plant-based source of protein. In fact, studies have shown that people who eat chickpeas actually have a higher nutrient intake of dietary fiber, polyunsaturated fatty acids, folate, magnesium, potassium, iron, vitamins A, E, and C. Reacher says, also shown that eating chickpeas can help fight cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes, and they also promote healthy weight management. The obesity epidemic in children is huge right now, so finding ways to get them nutritionally dense food matters. And we talk about this a lot with adults. We talk about how it matters how much nutrition do you get in your mouth when you eat it, right? Two things could have the same caloric value, but one is far more nutrient dense than the other. So getting nutrient dense foods into kiddos matters as well as into adults. Came across hummus chips. Those would be good too. I just love dipping. I'll take like a cassava chip or a brown rice chip and dip it into hummus. My kids love carrots dipped into hummus. Most kids will eat a carrot. Most. I had a question, Lindsay. I do think more of a spread and just have them pick. Yeah, it is hard. It is hard, Lindsay. I hear you. Having the buffet style has worked for us, but it is definitely difficult. All right, number 3. Now, this one's often recommended. I have a little bit of a caveat on it, okay? Yogurts with customized toppings. Here's the thing. Most kids will eat yogurt, okay? Point number 2. All yogurts are not created equal. I am not a fan of the standard milk, full of hormones, non-regulated milk yogurts. I think they cause more problems with kids. I don't think that kids digest dairy as much as we would like to think that they do. So I do tend to lean more towards coconut yogurts, soy yogurts, non-GMO soy. I love the cashew yogurts coming out. But if you are going to do a dairy yogurt, if your child does like yogurt, definitely make sure it's non-GMO, organic, well-sourced dairy. Maybe lean more towards goat or sheep milk instead of cow's milk. You can play with that. But the other thing to watch for in yogurts is the sweetener. A lot of them just load a bunch of sugars in it. So what I tend to do is I'll do an unsweetened yogurt for the kids, but I'll use honey or maple syrup on top, and I will put, fruits that they like, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, sometimes a little bit of granola. You can make a parfait out of that. I haven't mentioned yogurt with chopped cucumber and minced mint. Yeah, especially on top of curries and stuff. Love that type of thing. You can also do this with something called chia pudding. Have you guys heard of chia pudding? I don't have this in the article, but chia pudding is basically taking chia seeds with a little bit, I use non-dairy milk, usually use almond milk, and you can mash banana in there, or fruits. You can put some cocoa powder. You can do pumpkin. You can flavor it in all different ways. But you basically mix it all. I put it in a jar at night and shake it up and put it in the fridge. And then in the morning when they wake up, I top it with berries and granola, and they eat it like a yogurt. But the beauty of a chia seed is it has a ton of fiber. It has essential fatty acids. It has so many health benefits, and the kids see it like a pudding, kind of like a tapioca pudding. Mary, I do have a chia pudding recipe on my website. I also use Pinterest a ton. If you follow me on Pinterest, I don't know if you do, but I do, just so you know, I sit around and collect other people's recipes as well. So I have my own recipes on Pinterest and on my website, but I also collect other people's recipes and I save them to a healthy recipes file. Now, a lot of them still need some modification. Sometimes you'll see me save something with like wheat tortillas, and I would use a different tortilla, but I usually try to find more whole food based recipes. I do have a lot of chia puddings in there. I think they're mostly in my breakfast column. So check that out. I use a ton of chia puddings from there. One of my favorite is an overnight oat recipe by Oh She Glows, Angela Leiden. And it is basically gluten-free oats, almond milk, chia seeds, mashed banana, and cinnamon. My kids love that. Shake it up, put it in the fridge, and in the morning they eat it like it's going out of style. So those are some things you can do in place of yogurt. If you need to use yogurt, it's a good starting point for the kids because they'll usually eat it. But definitely look at the source of it. Watch the sugar. But at least it's better than eating like really sugary cereals for breakfast, right? And it does get some nutrition in them as well. Number 4 has been a lifesaver for me, and that is the sweet potato. So I think we can all agree that most kids will eat French fries, right? So I make a lot of sweet potato fries, and I bake them. I don't fry them. When we go out to eat, my kids, if they have an option of ordering French fries, it's funny, they'll always order the sweet potato fry if it's an option. And they've gotten to that age where I let them pick. You know, I'm kind of like, well, what are they going to pick today? Are they going to pick something healthy? I mean, my son actually ordered a salad a couple weeks ago, and I almost fell off my chair. He's 9. You know, he ordered the hamburger, I think, and they said, well, do you want fries or a salad? And he said a salad. And I think my husband and I were like, what? What did you just say? All right. But they'll commonly order sweet potato fries. From the time they were little, we mashed sweet potatoes. That was the first thing we introduced. It's very commonly introduced to toddlers, sweet potatoes. So you can mash them up, you can roast them, you can put them in cubes. I mean, there's so many different options for them. You can dip them in hummus, you can dip them in ketchup. What we like to do is roast sweet potatoes in coconut oil and cinnamon. My kids love that. They'll eat it all day. In fact, when I add apples or pears to the roast, even more so. So whenever we have people over, like a lot of kids over, often we will roast sweet potatoes with fruit and top it with cinnamon and coconut oil. And I have to make multiple batches because it flies out the window. People love it, right? Kids love it. So that is a good problem to have, Mary. Won't eat fries, hot dogs, or hamburger. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't either. I definitely was pro-vegetable when I was a kid, and it was pretty funny. It just was weird because when you get a little bit older, it's weird when you order vegetables. Well, it was back then. Now it's not, but that's okay. But here's the thing about sweet potatoes. It's a great nutrient-dense food for kids because, one, they like it. Most kids like it. Number 2, it's high in fiber, high in antioxidants, high in vitamin and minerals. They support a healthy gut, they support vision, and they support brain development. In fact, sweet potatoes are rich in beta-carotene, which can be converted into vitamin A, so they help support the immune system, and they help support the health and the lining of the gut. Kids are exposed to a lot of bugs. So the more foods that we can feed them to give them the nutrients needed to protect their immune systems, the better. Sweet potatoes are a great one to add. So if you haven't tried that, if you have a picky eater, even husbands out there, if you have a picky eater, try roasting sweet potatoes with coconut oil or avocado oil or olive oil, depending on your preference, with some cinnamon. I use cardamom a ton. Sometimes you can add a little bit of chili powder too. Maybe it's not so much for the kids, but for the grown-ups, and then do different dips. I'll do a vegan mayonnaise with some garlic in it, like a garlic aioli. I'll do kind of that special sauce, like a ketchup, and I use a vegan mayo, kind of depending on what you do, but that's what I do. Ketchup and a vegan mayo mixed together, kind of like a Thousand Island dressing, and then I'll do like a regular ketchup. I like to add a little bit of spice sometimes to the ketchup, like a little bit of cayenne, make it a spicy ketchup, or, you can kind of play with those different options. Honey mustard is a great thing to dip sweet potatoes in as well, especially cinnamon covered sweet potatoes. So those are things you can do. Little kids like dips, and I would do a ton of dips for my toddlers when they were little. And now when we have people over, we'll do that a lot too. I'll roast potatoes and just have a multitude of dips just to hit different people's tastes, right? Antonio, thank you. I would love to have a cooking show. I do cook some things on these lives whenever I'm able to do it realistically with the equipment that I have. But yeah, I'd love to do more, and I'd love to do more cooking segments for all of you. I really would. I think it would be a lot of fun. Number 5, avocados. Now, I'm lucky. My kids love avocados. I mean, they'd eat avocado with anything. I can put avocado on their cereal and they'll eat it. They'll eat an avocado when presented with an avocado. They are very much like me. So will I. I never turn down a nice avocado. Avocado mayo is a good one too. Great suggestion, Richard. But here's the thing. You can hide avocados really well because they're meaty. They're fatty, they're meaty. So I have a recipe at drpingle.com. If you have not checked it out, check out my decadent vegan chocolate tart. Here's the thing. You don't have to make the tart crust. You can just make the filling, and it's like a chocolate pudding. And kids love it. And it's made out of avocados. And you can make that ahead of time. Make your own little pudding cups. You can send it to school with them, but my kids love that. They also love avocado, so I can put guacamole on pretty much anything, which I'm very lucky for. But most kids are pretty open to avocados, particularly toddlers. But you can add them as a base in smoothie. which is great as a base in many desserts. So it's a great way to add it in. They're also rich in antioxidants. They fight inflammation. They support your heart. They're also really high in fiber. They support digestion, and they can help prevent tummy aches and constipation in the little ones. So it can be very, very helpful. So some of the swaps, I do have a infographic on the article about 5 foods for picky eaters, and it shows kind of how to swap it. One of the biggest pet peeves I've had as a parent, and sorry to bash a brand, but are the goldfish. What's up with these goldfish? They are so horrible. They have no nutrition, and they are full processed foods, yet every single preschool gave goldfish as a snack, and it drove me nuts. So I was like, all right, I worked with my kids went to a preschool that was absolutely awesome with allowing me to bring my kids their own snacks. But they would give goldfish, so I had to find alternatives where they felt like they were having something like a goldfish. So that, I used Annie's Organics Bunny Grams, and sometimes I'd take cereal in, little gluten-free, sweet cereal that they could munch on instead of the goldfish. All of the cereals, the majority of the cereals that are marketed to kids are full of junk. Pay attention, okay? Let's not get them hooked on it. Right? So other things I do, instead of peanut butter, I use almond butter, right? Instead of dairy yogurt, I use coconut yogurt. Instead of pudding cups, I make my own avocado pudding, or I use, there's a couple brands that do almond milk based pudding. Instead of wheat pasta, I try to switch it up with brown rice pasta, chickpea pasta, lentil pasta, or zucchini noodles, right? Someone saying that sadly sweet potatoes in USA are loaded with over 20 pesticides. Yeah, so there's certain foods you should definitely buy organic, and there's definitely cleaning that needs to happen with them. It's unfortunate. Our food in general in the US is really laden with pesticides, and it's a problem, and I think it's causing more problems, especially when we mix it with processed foods. So, it's a holistic viewpoint on diet in general. When I talk about these foods, people often ask, oh, well, how many times should I eat them per day? Well, it kind of depends on what else you're eating. For me, being exclusively pretty much plant-based, with the exception of like honey and things like that, and I do eat eggs occasionally, but for the most part, I don't really have to think about it because I'm not eating any processed foods. I'm eating all whole foods, and washing them really well. But yeah, a lot of our vegetables, it's quite sad. Banana babies. Have you guys heard of banana babies? I used to do those as a frozen treat for the kids. They're a frozen banana with dark chocolate. You can make your own too. Making your own popsicles is a lot of fun. I have some great popsicle recipes at drpingle.com. Check them out. There's a chocolate popsicle, and I believe it's also a fruit-based popsicle on there. Making popsicles with kids is a lot of fun, and this gives them something that's similar to kind of what their friends are eating, but gives them more nutritional density, and gets their mouth and taste buds more associated with healthier options. My 9-year-old Shay does not like traditional cheese. He never really ate it as a kid, so he never really got addicted to it. And now he very rarely eats it, and when he does, he usually sets it down. He's like, it doesn't taste very good, right? I mean, find a kid that doesn't like cheese, right? I have one. Bread, we would sub, white bread and stuff full of, read your bread label on on a lot of the breads. They're full of a lot of junk as well. So we would sub with gluten-free breads, or more, when we did use wheat-based, we would do a sprouted grain as opposed to, processed flour. So I do have some swaps there. Some of them are still processed, some of the swaps, because sometimes you get stuck. You have to buy a microwavable meal. Which one should you pick? It's not always the best choice, but I realize that we can't always cook everything either. So sometimes as a parent, I had to come to this realization of, okay, sometimes I do have to grab something quick. So I do need to buy, Annie's Bunny Grams, because I need something to be able to send with him to school, other than apple slices and carrots and celery and that type of thing. So sometimes we do have to make compromises as a parent, but there are certain brands that I find to have a better nutritional value than others. So I do make some suggestions there. If you think your child truly is losing weight, not growing, has an underlying disorder, then yes, you should have them checked out. But if they're doing their usual thing, they're playing, they're smiling, they're sleeping, they're eating, feeding. It might just be helping them become more in tune with what they really want to eat and finding out why they don't want to eat. The last thing I would suggest, which I find to be very important, is have your kids help you cook, whether or not they eat it. My kids help me all the time, and I'm making these meals and they're like, Mom, I wouldn't eat this. But what's interesting is they're learning the ingredients. They're learning how to make them. They're getting their hands dirty a little bit. They'll try stuff. I'll have them try salad dressing or something that I'm making, and they'll take just a little bit and say yay or nay, and I let them kind of be involved more. And I think that gives them a little bit more independence, teaches them how to cook. And when I'm long and gone, hopefully when they're in the kitchen someday, they'll think of me. I know that when I'm in the kitchen cooking and I'm making something that I used to make with my mom, it fills my heart with love. When I'm making something that I used to cook with my grandmother all the time, whenever I make something or use a cookbook that she gave me or whatever, it just melts my heart, and so just teaching them that home and family is working together in a kitchen, I think is a valuable lesson. And I think also it teaches them a lot about food and what's healthy and what's not and how to prepare it. And I think you have to get through those toddler years and those elementary years, but if you're including them, hopefully they'll start to come around. Cameron the other day made enchiladas, which surprised me. He just did I think it was a black bean enchilada. And so I went in and made a vegan mole sauce for the top because I thought, okay, I'll come in and help him. I'll sit on the stove and make the mole sauce and he can make the enchiladas and we'll meet in the middle and I'll pour it over the top and we'll cook it. And he loved it. It was fantastic. And now he wants to learn how to make mole sauce. So I think, it kind of prompted him to think about it, which was good. Do I use a specific blender for the avocado pudding? We bought an almond cow and make our own nut milks. Lindsay, I would love an almond cow. I make my own nut milks with the blender, but I have been watching Almond Cow. Almond Cow, if you're watching, hook me up. I'll use it. I'll share it. I think I'm glad to hear you like it because I know it's very easy to make almond milk in my Vitamix blender. To answer your question, I use a Vitamix, and I make my own almond milk all the time. But the avocado pudding can be made in a high-speed blender. I do recommend a high-speed blender or a food processor if you don't have a high-speed blender because the avocado, is thick. So it needs to be blended really well. But yeah, Vitamix primarily. But good to hear about the almond cow. I'd love an almond cow. I'm going to buy one soon. Great idea. Yeah. All right. I got a couple over here. Let's see. Wonderful way to learn. Yeah. So yeah, those are just some suggestions. So for those of you that are dealing with picky eaters, and I know it's at least 50% of you, hopefully this helped you out. And most important thing as a parent, don't beat yourself up. I've learned this the hard way. With the first kid, I tried to do everything perfect, made my own baby food, didn't let him eat anything ever, was hovering over it a little bit. And then when the second one came along, it posed a little bit of a challenge. And I realized that, we're all human. We do our best, right? And if I can even teach my kids to just know what healthy food is and maybe eat it occasionally, I think I'm ahead of the game, right? And then hopefully over time, they'll become more and more involved with nutrition and nutritional health and taking care of their bodies. And, I try to lead by example by taking care of myself and showing them the benefits of doing so. So just try to involve your kids more. Don't stress over it. And talk to them. See what they think about the food that they make. Texture seems to be a big thing in my house. They'll like one brown rice noodle, but they won't like the other one. But it's like, okay. Good to know. I think I bought something the other day at the grocery store and I came home and Tyler's like, yeah, he's not going to eat that. And I'm like, but he eats this type of thing all the time. And he's like, nah, he's not going to eat that brand. I was like, oh, darn it. So, all right, guys, nice to see you. I'm Dr. Tricia Pingle. If you're new here, I'm here most days, Monday through Friday, about this time, talking about different health topics, not always pediatric topics. drpingle.com is my website. I have a ton of recipes there, a ton of articles, a lot of videos linked in the articles. If you want to go back and look at some other topics, videos, and lives, you can check out my YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram. Really nice to see all of you here. I hope you had a great morning and enjoy your Thursday. Thanks. Bye-bye now.